So there's a radiance in the field this morning, and it's not just because the sun is shining. The radiance of the mother, the radiance of the true wholeness of the unconditional embrace, the radiance that invites us to shine in our fullness, in our full blossoming. And that it matters not whether we have a male or female biology. It does not matter what gender we think we are, that every being is here to embody the wholeness and the true radiance of the unconditional, to embody the essence of mother, the essence of Ma, the essence of true nourishment, the ability to nourish ourselves at the deepest level, to be drinking from the wellspring of source, to be drinking in the infinite, unbounded frequencies in every cell and fiber of our being, so that we actually know who we are before and beyond any story, description, or understanding of who we are in the worldly sense. And it actually is what allows us to blossom truly in the play of the world, on the surface of life, exactly as we are uniquely, when we are drinking from the source and we are not trying to be nourished from the world. Because of course, if we are trying to be nourished from the world, we are trying to be nourished from a frequency field that is limited. So there can be a sense of discovering the true nature, as in, who am I? And of course the me thinks that the discovery of who am I is a personal discovery, right? The me thinks, well, I need to know who I am. I need to know that I am the I. I am the I that is, right? I need to know that I, me needs to know that. But the great glorious truth is, of course, that it's in the absence of me that what I am is discovered, that we discover that what I am is not the me, but is the impersonal, unbounded, and that it's really got nothing to do with the me. And yet, curiously, the absence of the me isn't the disappearance of the uniqueness. It's actually the blossoming. It's the moment that life truly begins. It's the moment that life can truly live itself. Because the me is a protective strategy. It's a belief system, right? So when we ask the question, like, where am I not free? What we're really tapping into is, where am I entangled with belief? Because the truth is that we are already free. We have always been free. And yet, if we are entangled with belief, with conditioning and protective mechanism, that entanglement gives us the belief that we are not free. And the belief that we are not free kind of puts a foot on the hose of the flow of the unconditional and true deep nourishment, right? So we're longing to be nourished, but we've generally lived in an experience where we haven't, in our human life, really known what true nourishment is. because we could say in our human life, we have all generally been supposedly nourished in the early life by an unnourished mother, right? And an unnourished mother doesn't, for all her love and care and intention, doesn't have the capacity to bring divine nourishment. So that's the place where we were not seen, and we created needs met structures, and we learned that to leave our intuitive knowing was the safest option, to not necessarily, of course, disconnect completely, because we couldn't. And of course there's a total innocence in the field, that there's like many just lines of the unnourished mother. And we could say the unnourished mother is the mother that's not connected to divine nourishment, right? We could maybe reference an unnourished father as well, right? In the worldly sense, that if we're not connected to the divine, where true nourishment is, and in a way we're parched, we're hungry for true nourishment, but we don't actually know how to truly nourish ourselves. And in a way, true nourishment is a reconnection. It's a reorientation in our inner functioning to feeling deeply nourished from the source, from the mother, like a deep, true nourishment. Divine nourishment is nourishment of the remembrance of our own wholeness, the nourishment of, like a wellspring of love, eternal, unconditional, undivided, a wellspring of resources, right? So true nourishment is feeling resourced, deeply resourced and nourished, so that we don't believe that there's lack, and we're not believing that there's like a lack and scarcity of love, of nourishment, of care, of holding. There's not a lack of resources, right? So the first resource that we are concerned about is love and food, right? Love and milk, holding and milk, right? Our first nourishment, or even in the womb, there's a sense of that umbilical nourishment. But we're in that earlier sense where we're so usually being nourished by an unnourished mother, and so we're being nourished with, and we're soaking in those frequencies. And of course there's no blame. There's just actually like a revelation and a compassion for the innocence of generally just how unnourished we are as a humanity, that we're so disconnected and unnourished in the truth and fullness of our divine nature and the wholeness, like the true nourishment, and in a way what the mother, what wholeness is the unconditional, the purity. What the divine is the purity, the untainted, that which has never believed that it is less than or lacking in any way. So, as I've said before, the Divine Mother isn't a lady in a satin dress, wearing a tiara and sporting, a few wild sacred weapons and a tiger. That's symbology, right? that's an expression of the attributes of wholeness, of the qualities that wholeness in its integrity is, right? So in a way, this whole dance of what we call awakening or enlightenment or opening to true nature, discovering where we are not free, is really about allowing ourselves to connect to the wide open, infinite, unbounded field where true nourishment is, where we can actually blossom and flower as the true, unique beauty that we are. And we can be so nourished that our beliefs in unworthiness, in lack, all of the misunderstandings that we hold that keep us in a sense of being bound, can be kind of saturated, truly saturated, like really loved. I'm feeling now this beautiful, in Sanskrit, there's a word for love. There's many words for love in Sanskrit. And one of the words is Sneha. And it's the same word as oil, as oiling, right? And so it's like to really be like saturated, like oiled, like really, really nourished with a quality of love that really nourishes. We can have such a misunderstanding of what love is. And in our human experience, so often our idea of what love is has conditions upon it. And so we inherit the sense of love having conditions upon it. We believe that there are conditions upon how we are loved, how we are seen, how deserving, how worthy we are of nourishment. And there are conditions upon, depending on our sense of safety, belonging, connection, how we have the capacity to love, right? We've often heard, that we can only love as deeply as we love ourselves. And in a way, what we're speaking of is that we can only really love, and in a way, what we're speaking of is being open and connected, like just, here I am, I love you. We can only be as open, as safe as we feel, as deeply as we feel like we belong to true safety, to something that won't leave us, that won't threaten us, that won't mistreat us, right? And of course, that can't be found in the play of things, because the play of things is a changing landscape. That is the certainty that we know of the world, is that it's constantly changing. But what is certain and unmoving is the infinite, eternal, unbounded, that we enter as awareness, we enter as presence, we enter as stillness and silence, or we could say we enter or we reconnect as stillness, as silence. And we start to drink in a kind of nourishment that comes from the presence field. Because the presence field is the presence of God, the presence of the Mother, the presence of the unconditional, the presence of the unbounded, the presence of the unlimited, unrestricted, the presence of a welcome, an inclusivity, an all-encompassing, right? The presence of a unified field, a oneness that just is, right? So when we come to this moment and we join, it's like we just drop into like a sense of holding, of embrace that is the Mother. It is love unconditional. It is the presence of God, the presence of the glory, light, the divine light. It doesn't matter what words we give to that. It's about the frequency where, let's say, our intuitive knowing and the part of us that knows the truth of who we are finds a frequency match to true nature, right? So whenever we find a frequency match to true nature, it's like snap, right? Here I am, great glory, in the likeness of you. And whether that's in the company of a presence that feels rarefied, whether that's in the company of nature, which is a presence that feels rarefied, whether that's as we drop in to a sitting, a stillness, a presence, and we open to the field that is rarefied. It's that we find a match of like, oh yes, this is who I am. This is where I belong. This is where I can drink from a wellspring that is eternal and unbounded, abundant and free, absolutely freely given, right? No charge, no tariffs, right? It's like drinking the water that hasn't been bottled, right? In the play of life, we're looking for the bottled version, but we're never going to feel nourished by the bottled version because it's always going to be just a little bit contaminated by the container, right? A little bit contaminated by having sat around for a few years, soaking in the chemical grace of being in a bottle, right? So we have this possibility in presence to drink from the source, the wellspring, the unbottled, the undivided, unconditional nourishment. And my goodness, we recognize it. And we don't need to have a revelation that is like, oh, I know who I am. I am the I before, I took on this. It's not a mental understanding, and it's not an ownership, and it's not a new identity. It's a felt sense of being saturated with a frequency that kind of puffs you up, plumps you up with a sense of your true nature. Doesn't plump up the ego sense. It plumps up the sense of knowing who you are, the frequency match, the recognition, the revelation of your true nature, right? And that true nature is discovered in this abundant wellspring that is a resource that has no conditions or limits upon it, and that in presence we can drink from this wellspring. We can truly drink from the wellspring and receive the nourishment. Yeah. And we discover what true nourishment is. Like, true nourishment reminds us that the learned self-reliance isn't the fullness of who we are. We discover that the learned independence and strategies have been coping mechanisms that we learned when we didn't feel nourished, right? So self-reliance and the independence that we learned in the young life, we realize is a coping mechanism that we learned to try to nourish ourselves. And in that, this is where we meet the very early places where what we might now call addiction and habit came in, right? Because we were trying to nourish ourselves because we didn't feel fully nourished. So we found things to try to meet our needs and to try to nourish us. And even in certain circumstances, nourishment could even feel like numbing ourselves, right? Even finding ways of making the hard feelings go away, making, the pain, the sadness, the emotions go away. And our learned experience was, this is nourishing. This is how I make myself feel better, right? So So we learn these strategies that have served us, that we then in our life as an adult and as we evolve, we wonder, why do I keep doing that? Why does that keep happening, right? But there's a part of us that believes that is nourishment, that is sustaining. And whether it's through experience, through certain ways of relating, whether it's through some kind of resource or substance, or whether it's through self-reliance, whether it's through actually keeping ourselves separate and like a total disconnect, right? That there's so many strategies that we have, but what we discover in this nourishment is that we are one. We are one. And all of the relational dynamics that have caused us to protect are actually the place where we learn to be nourished. We say we get nourished through the source, and then it's through the relational field that we bring what we're opening to into a lived reality, that we, in a way we could say, like, there's a frontier of our evolution where the relational field is where it really comes into a lived experience, because it's in the relational field that we find that there's often discordance or challenge, or I'm fine when I'm by myself, I'm absolutely fine, but when I'm with family, or when I'm with my partner, or when I come into this situation, then who am I then? And in a way, of course, we have to discover the ground, the nourishment, and being able to drink from the wellspring in every situation, because that's where we are discovering our wholeness. And in a way, discovering the discordance isn't discovering a failing. Discovering the discordance is an opportunity to recognize, okay, so here's a place where I don't feel comfortable. Here's a place where I'm not free. I don't feel free. There must be some kind of conditioning or belief that I'm entangled with here. And we don't have to necessarily work it out. It's not a mental project. It's about drinking from the wellspring where we find that frequency match, where we feel really truly nourished. It's like we enter an unconditional relationship with our own self, with the mother, with grace. We could say the mother, we could say the father, we could say the unified one. Often in our lived experience, our human experience, using the word mother and the frequency field of mother, of Ma, is such an important part, because in our human lived experience, we are birthed through a mother, right? And what we're speaking of is the unnourished mother, and what we have taken in from the unnourished mother, the disconnected mother, the mother line wound, sometimes it would be called. What we've taken in isn't any discredit to the mother that has birthed us into our human lived experience. It's actually an honoring of the mother line, and a recognition of how we have this possibility to reorganize the continuation of that discordance. We have this possibility to bring a sense of nourishment, and as we nourish ourselves and we discover where true nourishment is, and we reorganize the beliefs and patterns and what we have taken in a field, an atmosphere of where there isn't true nourishment. So this is why in this lived experience, like the Divine Mother becomes like an emblem for us, a symbol, a frequency of wholeness. And in a way, the mother is like the the embodied wholeness of the Shiva Shakti as one, of the masculine and feminine as one. The mother becomes the emblem of the wholeness, and yet, like the mother isn't just the feminine. The divine mother is the wholeness, is that which gives birth, in a way, to it all, right? And of course, there's so many layers and nuances, but this is just how we're speaking of it now, and this connection to how in our human lived experience we connect to the mother, because the mother represents the divine. It represents true nourishment. It represents wholeness, right? It represents what is before division, the belief in division, what is even before the masculine and the feminine being seemingly two parts, and yet always the integral whole is the masculine and feminine in balance, in perfect union, in perfect balance. And of course, our whole field of relating is a dance of trying to achieve that balance, which is why self-reliance as a strategy doesn't work, is because we need to find balance and coherence in the relational field in order to really come to a sense of allowing ourselves to be truly nourished. Yeah. So this radiance we spoke of right at the beginning, this radiance is the divine light, is the frequency of Ma, the frequency of true nourishment, of wholeness. It's a frequency that nourishes us, and that we find this nourishment here in presence, in just being, in the presence field, in the stillness, the silence, and opening to the infinite, unbounded grace field, like the transmission field. And right, even the sense of transmission, right, is like being nourished. It's like drinking in or infusing, right, being infused. It's like taking in nourishment. It's like soaking in a field where you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make an exchange to get nourishment. You're being unconditionally nourished. Yeah. And in a way, what we could say is that the invitation is just to not cut that nourishment off. I mean, it's never completely cut off, but when we're in protection, we're on a certain level, we're limiting the amount of love and nourishment and care and compassion, divine support and grace that we're kind of letting in. We're saying, it's okay, God, it's okay, Ma, I've got it, I'm over here. Because as we've spoken of before, there can be all sorts of ways that we mistrust the seeming divine. We mistrust God. We mistrust love. But that's, of course, because we're entangled with the concepts that we have of what didn't feel nourishing in the atmosphere of the early life. And in a way, there's no blame in any of it. And the discovery of the innocence of it is a really huge part of letting ourselves be nourished and untangling that nothing has ever been anybody's fault, that we're all, as humans, in the same predicament, we could say. And yet we are all also equally resourced by what we are and who we are. Yeah. So just resting and receiving in this moment. What does it feel like to you to feel a sense of receiving nourishment, of resting as presence and feeling like a connection and attunement to a deeper and wider, broader, more infinite sense of yourself, and to feel being nourished here, being held here, being seen here, being loved here. To receive the radiance, it's like standing in the sunshine and just receiving the warmth and the light and just feeling that relaxation, that it invigorates and enlivens every fiber and cell of the being. And so in presence, it's like we're taking in light. We're taking in true nourishment. Our cells are being activated out of their dormant state. Our consciousness is being enlivened and recalibrated and upgraded. We're being nourished. Our consciousness is being nourished with its own purity. We're being infused with a frequency field where we have this possibility of discovering a match, a snap, a sameness with our true essence nature, who we are, where true safety is, what true belonging is, right? So just noticing how this is landing, what is being enlivened, and what does it feel like uniquely for you in your direct experience? How does it feel in your body? Maybe take a few nice, long, slow, deep breaths, and how does it feel to connect to the breath and the kind of nourishment that comes, like the prana, the life force that comes with breath, and how that life force is freely given. Like it's a natural resource. And every breath a gift, and the life force that then activates through the cells. The soaking, infusing in the field of the frequency field of presence, that through your own presence you open to the sense of my presence, to the presence, and of course then to the presence of God and glory, to the infinite unbounded presence, to the presence of Ma, the presence of wholeness, of light, of intelligence. I open to receive the fullness of myself, being infused, supported by the breath, right? Just to receive yourself, and just to notice how it feels to be nourished and receive yourself. Jai Ma is an expression of victory to the divine light, the victory that is already here. It's a celebration of the wholeness that is already whole, the integrity that is always integral and whole. Jai Ma is the celebration and the recognition that the divine light is always radiant, always shining, always whole, that all of the aspects and attributes are always included in the fullness, in the wholeness. And that wholeness is our true self, the self that we can be seeking for. And of course we don't find that true self in any posture of limitation. That we find that true self in resting and opening to this presence field where true, unconditional, freely given nourishment is ever flowing abundantly. So we're opening to a whole frequency field where we realize that if we cut ourselves off from the great freely given resource, that all that is ever happening is that we're in a protection and we're kind of resisting the outstretched hand. And so when we come to presence and we truly rest, we take the outstretched hand, and when we take the outstretched hand, it's like the me disappears into the light, into the grace, into the radiance of the one heart. And yet the sense of who I am, it doesn't disappear. It still blossoms in its uniqueness. We're still invited to flower, to be an expression of this love, to be like a wellspring that can be tapped for nourishment, to be a frequency of nourishment. To be the love is to be the nourishment. We have this capacity to look into the eyes of any being and see the light, the glory, the love shining, no matter what the persona, identities or character that is playing. We're able to see the unity of it all. We're able to be a flow of compassion, whether it be fierce or gentle. We flow as compassion. That's what we are. We are naturally discovering. That in a way the human life is about seeing through the human condition and open to being human, being the being so that we can be human, but we can discover what it is to embody the refined intelligence, the love, light intelligence that we are, instead of being like an empty shell, thinking that we know it all, and yet empty of true deep nourishment. So trying to find nourishment in, of course, one of the main places is food and the massive overconsumption that's prevalent, particularly in the West. Right? Massive overconsumption of everything, too much of everything. We have way too much, more than we need of everything, but we still want more because we're trying to find nourishment. We're trying to find nourishment in things, in more things, more food, more snacks, more this, more that, right? More relationships, more experiences, more. Whereas the truth of this life is about what we let go of. How we discover true nourishment. It's not that we don't need the resource of the nourishment of food, but there's a total recalibration that happens when we're connected to our intuitive knowing. We've all heard the expression comfort eating, and in a way, most of our Western habit is a kind of comfort eating, like filling our faces, filling our faces with more than we need of everything, right? Filling our lives with more things. Oh God, don't let me be empty. But it's like in the emptiness we find fullness, in emptiness we find presence, in emptiness we find love, in emptiness we find the glory and grace and the radiance. And then our intuitive knowing allows us to recalibrate the life. We fuel our life with the rich and nourishing offerings because we're attuned to our intuitive knowing where our yes is, that we're not overriding the deep intuitive knowing of our very wise, what we call the nervous system, like our consciousness. We're not overriding our consciousness with learned ideas, right? There's something that we've spoken called prajna parada in Sanskrit. Sometimes it's translated as like a crime against the wisdom, but it's really where we override our intuitive knowing, where we, like a learned, limited belief or idea, overrides a deeper, truer knowing, a wisdom, a true wisdom. Of course, a crime against the wisdom makes it sound like we should be guilty. And that's not true. There's an innocence to it all. But that sense of going against the wisdom, it happens because we're trying to find nourishment in things. It's because our wiring, our early wiring, learned to find nourishment in the resources that were available to us, right? So there's an innocence to it all, and there's a magic to actually the revelation of the innocence. Because the revelation of the innocence sets us free from guilt and shame and believing that habits and what we might call addictions or discordant behaviors, why they keep repeating, even though we think we know, we realize that we do know better. We do know a wisdom. We do know a more caring way to be, perhaps we could say. And yet the question, why would I move that way? It comes because we learned to resource ourselves. We learned to nourish ourselves through coping mechanisms. And it's as we reconnect to true nourishment that we don't have to try to give up. We learn to embrace everything so fully while being so saturated with true nourishment that what no longer serves us falls away naturally. What no longer serves us doesn't need to be made an enemy, doesn't need to be kind of bathed in an ocean of guilt. It's like when that guilt can be loved, when that sense of I'm doing wrong, or this is wrong, or I should try and get it right, when all of that is held in this true, nourishing, unconditional love, a love that welcomes and receives at the level of frequency, then everything starts to shift naturally because we're connected to our intuitive knowing, to the field of heart, of presence, and the intelligence that we are made of. So it all starts here now in receiving the radiance, the celebration of the wholeness, and attuning to where that knowing is present, and just drinking in the nectar, drinking in the nectarine bliss. that is freely flowing here. And letting the recalibrations happen naturally. So just resting and receiving, being infused with the grace of your own intelligent knowing, being infused as you allow yourself to be nourished here. Infinite, unbounded nourishment, an integral alignment with grace, discovery of what grace truly is. Just being deeply present with yourself, feeling all of yourself, just right here now, receiving, feeling the unbounded infinite, and feeling the sense of your human presence, your embodied presence being here. The body, embodying light, embodying love. To feel yourself here, notice the breath moving in and through and out, and in and through and out. Just drinking in the nourishment of your own revelatory field.